Hey again everyone, and welcome back to the channel for the next installment in our ongoing new figure showcase series. And for this series I'm doing a quick review and posing session with the latest addition into the collection. And we're going to continue on with the Wizarding World series, looking at the second figure Hot Toys released from Fantastic Beasts, The Crime of Grindelwald. And that is Gellert Grindelwald himself, the movie's primary antagonist. And this is also based on the Johnny Depp iteration of the character, which was plagued with issues, especially when the role was recast for the third film. So just a quick discussion on Grindelwald. Obviously, he's the dark wizard of legend that was referenced in the Harry Potter series and was seen in the Deathly Hallows briefly, so we know where his story ultimately ends. And we also know the importance of his Elder Wand being one of the Deathly Hallows. So I did think it was interesting to go back to the time period where he was essentially amassing power, and also to take a look at the history between him and Dumbledore. In theory, it should have made for a great movie. The execution maybe struggled at times. And the biggest issue, I think, was casting. Now, I don't think it's the Johnny Depp casting itself. I actually really liked that and thought it was interesting from the reveal at the end where he goes from Colin Farrell to the ultimate reveal where we realize who he is in the first movie. And I liked the storyline through the Crimes of Grindelwald, but then following Johnny Depp's legal problems, the role was recast and Mads Mikkelsen took over. Now, I think Mads Mikkelsen is an amazing actor, playing some great roles like the villain in Daniel Craig's Casino Royale, but the follow-up from Johnny Depp's take, and also visually, it was a totally different look. They didn't even try to make him look like he had a similar style. So I also think that hurt the series. But I like seeing this version of Grindelwald in the movie. After playing Jack Sparrow and over-the-top characters, it was great seeing Johnny Depp in a slightly different role. Although unfortunately it didn't extend beyond that. But on the plus side, we did get a figure out of it. So looking at the package here, which again is the Hot Toys exclusive version, you'll note that similar to Newt, he doesn't come with that many accessories. You get a few hands, a wand, you get two skulls, which we'll discuss later on because they're pretty interesting, and you also get a pendant. And as the exclusive, we get this bird as well, which looks pretty nice, although does it belong with this figure? I think that's debatable. And then you get the standard display base, which like Newt has a similar surface pattern, which I guess is supposed to mimic the graveyard scene at the end of the movie. So now let's jump into the accessories and start by taking a closer look at the hands. And like the Newt, you don't get much, right? You get a few that are useful for posing or for holding some of the accessories. And then like with the Newt, you also get a hand that's pre-posed and shipped with the Elder Wand already in place. Just like with the other figure, I love that they did this because it really lets the hand look more natural. Paint app on these is also great with a slightly more pale look on them to match Grindelwald's skin tone. Next up is the Elder Wand itself, which is basically recreated here for such a small piece. This one's definitely a little bit more unique looking than the Newt one. And of course, as we've already stated, this has a serious role to play in the original movies, so it's nice to have this separate from the hand, just to either display or use in some way or another. Next, you get the skull, which Grindelwald uses towards the end of the movie to, I think, get into a state where he can kind of foresee the future. So you get two versions here, one that's a more accurate representation of the unlit one that has the kind of off-white paint application, and the skull has some nice detail work on it, including some text and some detail work along the surface. And there's also a dent right above the forehead, maybe indicating that maybe the original person that the skull came from met with an untimely end. It's just really well done. Then you get the second version, which has a more translucent material. It still includes the same text on it, but it's designed for the light up feature. So looking at that feature, first of all, it looks great with the figure, but this is button cell operated. Hot Toys just started using USB recently, so this was still that older style light up feature. So for me, you know that's annoying. It'll be great for videos or some pictures, but it's not something that I'm going to make use of. But once you light it up, it has a really nice bright LED within that looks great. Although the light is so bright that it almost causes the text to wash out. But it looks good, and with the lights off, you can see how bright it really is. And I have to admit, I love kind of the ghostly nature of it, where you can just make out the details of the skull itself, and I like the way it lights up the figure, giving Grindelwald that spooky look. So I might have to think about wiring this one, but the standard skull looks equally amazing with the great detail work. So the next accessory is the pendant that comes with a nice silver string that does have some stiffness to it and some flex to it, so you can kind of pose it as you see fit. It's a very tiny accessory, but the pendant itself does have some nice detail to it, and it's a good recreation of the screen prop. And just like the Elder Wand, we know from the movies that this is a key magical charm that prevents Grindelwald and Dumbledore from attacking each other directly. And the final accessory we're getting is another magical creature. So he looks great, slightly larger than the Niffler and definitely larger than the Bowtruckle. What's interesting to me is that we see this creature for a moment in Newt's home within the luggage that he carries, and it's a great recreation of that, but it's not a creature that I immediately associate with Grindelwald. If anything, I would have expected them to give him the little animal from the start of the movie when he escapes from the Auror control as he's being transported. But for some reason, this is what we got. Look, I'm not complaining. It's nice to have another creature regardless, and I love the detail on the tail as well with the actual feathers and the flexy tentacles. So, nice to have. Now let's jump into the sculpt. And look, I think it looks great. I think there's definitely a likeness there, but I do notice that compared to the prototype, there was definitely a softening of the sculpt. I think there's a decent likeness here to Johnny Depp, but I don't think it's as good as the new, which was nearly perfect to me. And definitely not as good as the Jack Sparrow figures we've gotten from Hot Toys before, but I think it's close enough for me. And the first thing that also caught my attention are the eyes. Hot Toys kills it with the eyes, which really makes the figures look realistic. But on this one, Grindelwald has the different colored eyes that we saw in the movie, and Hot Toys was able to recreate that well. Paint apps are okay, although I almost feel like maybe the skin tone could have been a little bit more pale. So it's definitely decent, but not perfect in my opinion. Now, let's look at the rest of the figure, and this is where I think, like the new, this figure really shines, and that's the clothes. They're all really well done. Tailoring for this scale of figure is insane. The black overcoat is amazing with awesome detail extending to the buttons, and the lining is a nice dark green silky material. The bottom of the coat is also wired, so you can definitely get some stylish poses here. His vest has some solid detail as well, including a very unique looking chain that's holding a pocket watch in place and almost seems to have some trinkets attached to it. Belt is a faux leather with a ton of buckles, and the leather pants terminate in a pair of very interesting boots. Like the belt, they have a lot of buckles sculpted at the ankle, so it just makes for a very interesting look. It's funny, seeing him, it's almost like he's taking pride in being just different enough to stand out as a magical being, which kind of goes along with his entire storyline, but it looks great. Overall, there's just some great presence to him, especially if you pose him up with the skull. Figure has decent posability too, and fortunately is double jointed at the elbows, so the arms can move decently. You're not really going to do much with him, to be honest. One of the things about this character and new too is they don't really get ultra dynamic. Grindelwald just walks around as an intimidating wizard capable of just killing someone with the wave of a wand. So there's almost an elegance to the way he positions himself that I do think the figure manages to capture well. You can remove the jacket and see him just wearing the shirt and the vest below, and it looks fine, but I don't think it has the same feel to it without the jacket. That jacket really is what impresses, so I think I'll be keeping it on, but it is another option. Not sure what else they could have given him, to be honest, but overall, I think it's a solid figure and definitely a nice one to have to pair with new, which I'll do a quick comparison video for as well. Looking at the Grindelwald though, I do wish that they had continued on with this iteration of the character in the movies, but unfortunately Warner Brothers made some decisions, whether they were the right ones or the wrong ones, I think is something that could be argued ad nauseum. But they ended up going the way they did, and unfortunately this was the last iteration of the character in this form, but at least we got this visually amazing looking figure from it. So those were just a few thoughts on the Grindelwald from Hot Toys based on his appearance in the Fantastic Beasts prequel. Let me know your thoughts on this one. I'm extremely happy to have been able to pick him up and get him, and again, I didn't say it earlier, but thanks to my friend Fabs for giving me a great deal on these. So as always, thanks for watching, and if you are enjoying the content, please consider dropping a like, comment, or subscribing, and we'll touch base on the next video.